The first, last, and most important thing you need to know about texting is what is texting really for? And it's very simple. Texting is for getting the girl out on a date. That's it. It's not for turning her on. It's not for becoming her best friend. It's not for establishing a deep connection and letting her know your intimate fears and dreams. It's for getting her out on a date. So anything that leads to that is good texting. Anything that doesn't lead to that is bad texting, regardless of anything else, okay? Texting is very much a means to an end. And the reason this is important is that you can do your work in person much better than you can do your work via text. Text is a limited medium, right? It's useful because, we have our phones on us, and girls actually respond to texts more readily than they'll respond to a phone call necessarily. And it's easier to have them, respond to a text than it is to get them out on a date. So it's a window into communication. But ideally, you do much better having that interpersonal communication where they can hear your tone of voice, see you, see your body language, and you can communicate much more, okay? So the purpose of text, this sort of limited form of communication, is to get them in a venue where you can have better communication. Also, to be very clear, it's impossible, as far as I know, to have sex with a girl via text. Okay, sexting aside and whatnot, because you can't enter them through sexting, all right? You need to get them in person in order to sleep with them. So it's very critical that that be the objective. Let me tell you something that may surprise you about text game. The best way to get any one particular girl out via text is probably to be texting a lot of girls at the same time. It sounds strange, right? You'd think that would divide your focus or it wouldn't be relevant in any way, but here's the thing. Almost everything you do in text game that comes off as needy or try hard is going to be very, very unattractive to the girl. Almost anything you do in text game that conveys that you have abundance, that you're busy living your own life and barely even have time to text the girl, that you have other girls in your life, that you have a fun life going on, any of that kind of stuff is going to be massively, massively attractive. So if you have one girl in your phone that you're texting, whenever she texts, you're going to notice it, you're going to be on top of it, you're going to be very focused, and you're going to text back right away. You might text a little bit too long, too invested, that kind of stuff. Whereas if you have a whole bunch of girls you're texting, you may even kind of forget about any one particular one. And in a way, that's actually good, okay? That's simulating high-value male behavior. And to be fair, that's probably how she is when she's texting you back, because any attractive girl is getting hit up by lots and lots of guys as is, okay? So one of the best things you can possibly do is to have that abundance and not care too much about any one particular text conversation. Because again, anything that's needy is low value, anything that's non-needy is high value. The other great reason to be texting lots and lots of girls actually as well is that if you happen to, at a particular point in your life, send out a text that works really well as like a mass text or a general text, which we'll talk about later. If it works really well with one girl, it'll probably work really well with a lot of girls. So having a lot of girls in your phone and having a variety of conversations will just give you a lot more to text and a lot more ideas for any particular conversation. Finally, by having lots and lots of girls in your phone, you're going to get a lot of practice very quickly, and practice makes perfect. Okay, so one of the single best things you can do for your text game is get lots of numbers, follow up with them hard, and just keep following up, both to get lots of girls out and to have that abundance, but also as a learning experience. Most of the biggest mistakes I see guys make in text game over and over again have to do with a lack of patience. Guys got the number, they figure the girl likes them, they know they like the girl, so like, why don't I just get to the point and get the girl out on a date? And that would make a lot of sense if girls were the same as guys. Because as guys, we know we like the girl, we like her mostly for physical qualities, we know we want to have sex with her, and we're like, okay, let's just get to the point, let's get her out, right? Girls aren't like that. Girls need not only value or attraction, but they need some level of comfort and assurance, right? They need to know that you're not weird, you're not creepy, you're not a stalker, nothing bad is going to happen to them, that kind of stuff. And they want to feel a connection. So for guys, attraction is like an on and off switch, like on or off, right? For girls, it's like a dimmer switch, like that switch that you turn and the lights gradually go up or go down. And so what you need to do is just over time gradually raise the level of attraction, gradually raise the level of commitment. But if you're trying to jump straight to the close too quickly, it's going to convey a lot of negative qualities. It conveys very try-hard, conveys very needy, it conveys desperate. It also is circumventing or trying to get around that idea of building comfort, right? Building comfort with someone, letting them get to know you, is built over having a lengthy interaction, having some time and duration. So if you don't give the girl time to experience you, or if you seem to be rushing or pushing the girl, she's going to wonder why you're so pushy. Do you not enjoy the interaction with her? Do you not have anything else going on in your life? Etc., 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 right? So you want to avoid being needy and desperate. Now, how this manifests, which we'll talk about in great depth as we get to specific texting and all that, But how this manifests is a lot of guys, instead of going through like 2 or 3 texts in order to get to a particular point and enjoying the texting process and having some like personality conveyed throughout, they just want to cut straight to the chase and ask the girl out with like the first text. Or the first time the girl's at all positive, they try and say, let's go grab a drink at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. It's too much too fast. It should be a gradual build. It should be developing and displaying your personality and kind of getting to know the girl and letting her get to know you through the text. Now remember, the primary idea is to get her out on a date, but a lot of times the fastest way to get her on a date is actually to go slow. Right? If you go too fast and hear the word no, that's the thing that's going to slow you down the most. It's much better to go 3 texts to ask her out and hear yes, 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 than it is to go 1 text to ask her out, hear no, and have the conversation go dead or go all the way back to the start. All right? So that's your goal, is be patient enough that you're hearing yeses rather than nos. All right, let's talk about entitlement. For those of you who don't know, entitlement means how much you believe you deserve the girl. All right? And here's the thing. There's definitely such a thing as not enough entitlement, and there's definitely such a thing as too much entitlement. Let me explain both. Not enough entitlement is if you're coming from the perspective that you are sort of lower value than the girl, you'd hope she'd go out with you, you're kind of like nervous and embarrassed about imposing on her time, you're overly polite and cautious, maybe you don't take any risks, you don't like flirt or sexualize because you're afraid of offending. That's not enough entitlement, okay? That's where you're muting yourself or not being your fullest self or not going after what you want because you don't feel you deserve the girl. If you're in that position of no entitlement, you probably will not get very many girls. If anything, you're gonna have these like friendly back and forth conversations that go nowhere, or maybe you're just gonna come off very needy and the girl's not even gonna like you at all. On the other hand, there's such a thing as too much entitlement. Too much entitlement is where you kind of believe you're the shit and the girl should drop everything for you even though she barely knows you. And what happens with this is that guys get way too pushy, and they also get their ego caught up in texting a lot of times. So say for example, they're maybe making plans with a girl and she's like, oh, sorry, I can't because like I have to see my sister that day. And this is like, you know, maybe a guy they met 5 minutes, guy got her phone number. It's not like they have like this deep intimate connection, and he's like, ditch your sister, I'm better. It's like, whoa, hang on. Some guy I met 5 minutes versus my sister I've known my entire life and who I love as family, and he's telling me like, ditch your sister, I'm better. Like, okay, I appreciate the confidence, but like, come on, that's a little unrealistic. You need to understand that no matter how cool you are, you're only as cool in her eyes as you've actually demonstrated to her, right? So she doesn't really owe you anything, right? The idea is you're offering her this great experience of you, and she's potentially offering you this great experience of her. But neither one of you owe anything to the other one. She doesn't owe you anything, and by the way, you don't owe her anything either. If she starts being weird, you're totally free to cut off the text as well. Okay, so nobody owes each other anything. So don't feel that you're entitled to the level where it's like, they must respond to me, they must go out with me, they must prioritize me over everything in their life, even though I barely know them. Look, when you've been dating the girl for 6 months, you can ask her to prioritize you. When you've talked to her for 5 minutes and got her number, you're not a priority yet. You need to just have a great interaction, and instead of like obligating her to want to see you, make it seem so much fun and so cool to see you that she desires to see you, all right? So work on like changing her attitude and her mood rather than imposing rules and restrictions and getting all caught up in it. The other thing that happens with guys that are too entitled is when they get a no or get a rejection, they get very angry about it, or they get very egoic about it. And a lot of times what that ends up with is them sending like angry texts to the girl that just completely ruin things, all right? So those are the 2 things. One is not enough entitlement, which is like, I don't believe I deserve the girl, I don't push things forward, I don't take risks, and it never goes anywhere. The other is too much entitlement, where I just expect her to like love me and drop everything for me and make a plan with me on the first text, etc. And that's too much. What you want is that nice range in the middle where it's like, I'm amazing, we're great together, and it's actually assured that sooner or later we're gonna hang out. You should have that like deep belief that sooner or later you're gonna text back and forth, and there will come a time when both of you are free and you'll hang out, right? Or you'll text back and forth and she'll like you so much eventually that even if she's not free, she'll then become free for you. But you shouldn't believe that off the first text, off the like a 5-minute interaction, she likes you so much she'll drop everything. And on the other hand, you shouldn't believe that you're never going to get her at all right? There's a nice sweet spot where you have this assurance it's going to happen, but you're not needy, you're not pushy, and you're not overstepping for what the relationship has been. Let's face it, at one point or another, we've all sent that terrible, needy, awful text that totally ruins a good interaction. And in a way, yeah, texting is a bit of a mindfuck because it's very difficult for one text to totally blow the girl away and make her want to like hang out with you or sleep with you. But it's very easy for one really bad text to completely turn her off. Okay, so you want to be very, very careful to avoid the super needy text, to avoid that really bad text. Which leads to, first of all, the perspective that if in doubt, if it's between trying to do too much with a text or not doing enough with a text, err on the side of not doing enough. Err on the side of not having the most amazing text, but not making the big mistake. Okay, that's number one, just you don't want to make the big mistake. Now, how can you know if you are making the big mistake? Here are some signs. If you are feeling very emotional while texting, there's a good chance you're going to make a big mistake. If you're feeling rushed or pressured or like you have to get it right when you're texting, good chance you're going to make a big mistake. If you've looked at the text and thought about something and looked and thought and looked and thought and looked and thought, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to make a big mistake. Okay, so here's what I suggest to you. If you're not sure, just wait. Don't text back right then and there, okay? If you're like, oh, is this needy, is this not needy? Show it to a friend, show it to a girl, put it back in your pocket and think about it. Do not send the text, because once you hit send, you can't take it back. And most of the time, not responding to a text will not mess you up, because it's very plausible that you're doing something else with your life, you're busy. Again, being busy and having a good life is actually an attractive quality in text. So unless this is a situation where you're trying to like make plans with a girl right now in the next half hour, most of the time that delay is not going to hurt you. But that one really bad text will hurt you. Okay, so if you're unsure, just don't send it. Hold off, hold on to it, figure it out later. Not the biggest deal in the world. Secondly, if you are going to send it or you're unsure or whatever, ask yourself a couple questions. Ask yourself, would I send this to a girl I'm already dating, right? Someone I'm already assured of, I'm not trying to win over, I'm not trying to prove anything to. Would I send it to this girl, right? Because if you wouldn't send it to a girl you're already dating, but you're sending it to a girl you're trying to meet, there's a good chance that it's very needy or try hard or you're pushing for something too fast or something along those lines. So ask yourself that question. Next question you should ask is, would I send this to a non-sexual friend? Would I send this to someone who's just my friend I'm not trying to sleep with in any way, shape, or form? Because again, realize that like if you're too friendly in the text, you may slow things down, but you're not going to completely mess it up. Whereas if you're too sexual, too forward, too pushy in the text, you may mess it up. So err on the side of too friendly and err on the side of texting the way you'd text a friend, if in doubt, as opposed to some girl you're trying to sleep with and barely know. So that's another question you can ask yourself. Here's another very important question. Ask yourself, how much am I trying to do in this text? Every text should have pretty much one purpose or one message to it. If you're trying to like do three things, if you're like, I'm doing great, how have you been? And by the way, do you want to get drinks this Saturday? That's way too much. That's 3 texts, okay? That's 3 messages in one text. Each text should have one central message, one central thesis. If you do absolutely have to send 2 things, you might want to send it as 2 separate texts, or you might want to send one and then send the next in response to her next text, something like that. But when you send these long, convoluted, multi-part texts, you're just asking for problems. You're just asking to make it hard for her to respond, which means she won't respond. You're looking really needy. You might get a partial response that leaves you hanging and doesn't leave you in a good spot. All right, so don't try and do too much. Again, err on the side of less is more, okay? So would I send this to a girl I'm already dating? Would I send this to a friend? And am I trying to do too many things in this text? And if in doubt with all of that, put it back in your pocket, don't send it, think it over, and send it when you're in a clearer headspace and you're not feeling emotional. I want to pose a question to you. What is the worst response you could possibly receive to a text message? I think the answer to that question is silence. All right, you put out a text and you get nothing back. Now, for certain types of texts, it's not the end of the world. For certain types of texts, it really is. Okay, there are texts that require a response and texts that don't. If a text is asking 3 or 4 different questions about her and telling her you really, really like her, and you don't get a response to that, it gets really, really awkward to continue the interaction from there. However, if the text was just like an interesting, funny picture that you saw, or like a little like update of your life that didn't ask her any questions, and you don't get a response to that, it's not really a big deal to send another interesting picture or funny response or continue the conversation from there. So what I'm getting at here is that good text, especially text early on in the interaction when there's not a lot of back and forth and there's not a lot of assurance that she's very bought in, good text at that point should not require a response. This should be what I call value offering, right? They should be just like putting value out there, putting some fun, interesting comment, showing a little bit of your personality, making statements rather than asking questions for the most part. All right, it should not require a response. So a good criteria to ask yourself if you're unsure of a text to send is, if I text this and I don't get a response, am I killing the conversation? If the answer is yes, you probably should rethink that text, okay? Good texts, especially early on in the interaction, are texts that don't require a response. I would go so far as to say that up until the point where you're specifically making plans, you probably almost don't want to do any texts that require a response, right? When you're making plans, when it's like, hey, do you want to, you've already agreed on plans, you're like, does 7 o'clock work for you? At that point, you kind of fucking just have to put it out there, and it kind of requires a response. But at that point, the girl already likes you, there's a lot of history, and so even then, a no response wouldn't be total death to the interaction, okay? So, A, ask yourself, does this require a response? And B, ask yourself, if I don't get a response, will it kill the interaction? Very, very critical that you don't make that big mistake.